January 24th, 2022. South China Sea. The air is thick with the scent of jet fuel and sea salt, the perpetual signature of the carrier deck. Below, 90,000 tons of American steel, the USS Carl Vinson, carves a path through hostile churning waters. Above, a single sound pierces the mechanical symphony, the rising whine of an alarm that signals not a tactical threat, but a systemic failure. In the cockpit of a US Navy F-35C Lightning II, the pinnacle of stealth technology, a machine calibrated for digital warfighting, an asset valued at over $100 million. The pilot, call sign Warlock, is sweating through his oxygen mask. His HUD is screaming red. He is not taking enemy fire. He is fighting physics. The report crackles through the carrier's control tower, flat and chilling, draining the blood from the face of every officer listening. Warlock is suffering catastrophic, non-recoverable landing gear failure. Gear status: asymmetrical and locked. $100 million. 4 years of the nation's most advanced technological research. Now, that investment is hurtling toward a decision point that defies all conventional logic. The calculus is stark. Warlock can attempt the approach, betting his life and the lives of dozens of deck crew on a landing gear designed to absorb 70,000 pounds of force, but currently held together by prayer and luck. Or he can execute Protocol 480.3. He can deliberately destroy the machine. This is the ultimate paradox of naval power. Why does the US Navy, the wealthiest, most technologically advanced fighting force in history, repeatedly force its elite pilots to ditch $100 million assets into the abyssal darkness, choosing financial devastation over a Hail Mary landing? The answer is not economic. It is philosophical. It is dictated by a ruthless, unblinking analysis of collective risk. It is the moment the machine of salvation decides that the $100 million asset has become a $100 million bomb. To understand why a pilot is ordered to eject, you must first understand the environment he is attempting to return to. The flight deck of an aircraft carrier is not an airport. It is the most violent, confined, and kinetically charged patch of real estate on the planet. It is a floating city of warfare, where kinetic power is weaponized. An F/A-18 Super Hornet transitions from 150 miles per hour to a dead stop in less than 2 seconds, using a tailhook that must snag one of 4 cables stretched across a landing area barely the size of a football field. We call this a landing. The pilots call it a controlled disaster. The entire operation is precision engineering working at the absolute limit of human and mechanical endurance. This precision demands absolute predictability. When Warlock SF-35C reports an asymmetrical gear failure, the predictability dies. The critical 3. What kills the landing? For the landing signal officer, LSO, known reverently as the paddles, perched on the edge of the deck, the aircraft approaching is no longer just a jet. It's a detailed schematic of risk. A few failures cross the red line, demanding an immediate abort or ditch order. 1. Catastrophic gear failure. If the landing gear is not fully deployed, or if one strut is damaged, the resulting impact will be non-symmetrical. The jet, hitting the deck at full arrestment speed, will instantly yaw violently, transforming from an aircraft into a scythe of titanium and fragmented ordnance, sliding across the deck. 2. Hydraulic systems loss. Modern jets rely on triple redundant hydraulics for control surfaces. Loss of hydraulic pressure means the pilot may lose the ability to precisely adjust the flaps, elevators, or ailerons. This loss of granular control makes the final seconds of the approach impossible to manage. The jet will not fly onto the deck. It will simply fall free. Fuel overload. Non-dumping. Every jet must approach with minimum fuel. If a failure prevents the rapid dumping of thousands of pounds of jet fuel, which itself is an operational constraint, the mass of the aircraft is too high. That extra weight, combined with the extreme deceleration, guarantees a failure of the gear or a breach of the fuel cells upon impact. In Warlock's test case, the failure was mechanical and terminal. The landing gear, the very foundation of a safe recovery, could not be trusted. The decision to sacrifice a $100 million asset is not made in panic. It is the result of decades of protocol refinement, lessons written in the fire and twisted metal of past deck disasters. The collective mind of the carrier, comprising the LSO, Air Boss, and the entire Combat Information Center, CIC, performs a critical risk assessment in milliseconds. They are not weighing the value of the F-35C against the pilot, S-life. They are weighing the value of the F-35C against the operational survival of the entire carrier and its crew. A catastrophic ramp strike by a damaged, fuel-laden F-35C does not just kill the pilot. It threatens the lives of the plane directors, the handlers, the maintenance teams, dozens of men and women working in the most dangerous area of the ship. The ship structural integrity. A heavy strike can damage the arresting gear system or penetrate the deck. The ship's mission readiness, losing the ability to launch and recover aircraft for days or weeks. When the analysis is complete, the equation is cold. The kinetic energy of a compromised jet is too great. The machine must be sacrificed to protect the greater machine, the carrier itself. Warlock receives the command. It is not a request for an opinion. It is the final operational order. Execute ditching. Eject over water. SAR is inbound. Confirm. The machine must be destroyed. Now begins the race against the unforgiving laws of physics and the brutal physiology of the deep ocean. The decision has been made: destroy the asset. But the alternative, the cost of not destroying it, is what validates the protocol. Imagine the F-35C, compromised by asymmetrical gear failure, attempting to connect with the arresting wire. The moment the tailhook snags, the energy transfer is immense. In a perfect landing, the forces are distributed. In Warlock's situation, the impact would be utterly uneven. One side of the fuselage collapses. This is where the $100 million asset becomes the engine of massacre. The physics of impact dictate that the failing strut pierces the fuselage, instantly breaching fuel lines that still contain hundreds of gallons of highly volatile JP5 jet fuel. In the flash of deceleration, that fuel atomizes. The friction, the heat, the sparks, the deck becomes an inferno. A single uncontrolled landing can result in a chain reaction of exploding ordnance, turning the tightly packed stern of the carrier into a statistical savagery. We are not just talking about the life of one pilot. We are talking about the potential loss of dozens of highly trained personnel, the immediate cessation of flight operations, and damage that could sideline the ship for months. When the Navy mandates the sacrifice of a $100 million jet, they are performing preventative damage control against a potential multi-billion-dollar catastrophe and the unacceptable loss of life. Before Warlock can ditch, he must reduce mass. Fuel is the enemy. It is the core constraint of carrier aviation. Every gallon represents kinetic potential and volatile chemistry. Protocol demands that before any high-risk recovery or ditching, the pilot must dump fuel down to the minimum reserve needed for a final approach. But time is now a tangible, viscous entity. Warlock has moments to confirm the dumping procedure is working. If the system fails, or if structural damage prevents a full dump, the pilot must proceed anyway. A full F-35 hitting the water creates a massive hydrodynamic shockwave, followed by the near certainty of immediate fuel cell rupture and fire. The most successful ditching is one where the impact is precise and the explosion is minimized. Ditching an aircraft is the art of controlled destruction. It is not a crash. It is the ultimate test of airmanship. Warlock must maintain precise control, ignoring the psychological impulse to pull up. The goal is to slow the jet down to the edge of the stall speed, around 130-150 knots, and maintain a high angle of attack. He must hit the flat, wide belly of the jet against the water as surface, utilizing the water itself as a deceleration cushion. Crucially, the contact must be perfectly horizontal. Even a slight wing dip will cause the jet to immediately snag the water, initiating a violent cartwheel that guarantees instant structural disintegration and death. The moment the belly meets the sea, the pilot has less than half a second to complete the final, most critical task: ejection. The US Navy utilizes the Martin Baker US-16E ejection seat, a machine built for moments of absolute necessity. It is designed to punch the pilot clear through the canopy, overcoming the combined forces of gravity, wind blast, and hydrodynamic shock. It is the final extension of the machine of salvation. Warlock pulls the handles. In the subsequent instant, the F-35C slams into the South China Sea, twisting its remains into an unrecognizable ruin before beginning its rapid, silent descent into the abyssal darkness. But for the pilot, the battle has just begun. Warlock is now suspended over the water, his parachute slowing his descent. He is alive. He is free of the dying machine, but he has been delivered into the hands of the primary killer, the ocean. His window of survival snaps shut instantly. The South China Sea is deceptive. Even in warm waters, the massive volume of the ocean begins to rapidly strip heat from the human body. This is the physiology of betrayal. The body's core temperature drops. Hypothermia sets in, leading to loss of motor control, confusion, and eventually cardiac arrest. The clock is measured not in hours, but in critical minutes. The machine has been sacrificed. The pilot is now a vulnerable unit fighting chaos. The urgency of the situation now depends entirely on the third element of the protocol, the non-negotiable debt of SAR. The Carl Vinson as rescue helicopters must already be in the air, because the moment the pilot hits the water, the $100 million machine is replaced by an infinitely more valuable and far more fragile commodity: salts. The protocol demanding the intentional destruction of military hardware to save human life did not emerge from soft idealism. It was forged in the crucible of disaster. For decades, the Navy prioritized the machine, believing the training and cost of the aircraft superseded the immediate danger. The shift in philosophy began with a terrible realization. A highly trained pilot is a non-replaceable asset, and a crippled aircraft, once it hits the deck, can become a collective liability whose cost far exceeds its salvage value. During the 1960s and early 70s, before modern protocol solidified, the mantra was often, "Try to save the bird." The technological limitations meant that the airboss and LSO had less information, and the pilot felt an immense pressure, moral and professional, to return the costly asset intact. This resulted in catastrophic ramp strikes that ripped open carrier decks, triggered massive avgas explosions, and resulted in the deaths of multiple crewmen. These incidents proved that the statistical reality of a high-risk landing far outweighed the guaranteed loss of a jet over the water. The Navy realized that attempting to save the aircraft often led to the loss of both the aircraft and the pilot, plus collateral damage across the fleet. The most powerful fleets are those that prioritize endurance and operational tempo. A deck fouled by wreckage, fire, and casualty counts is a fleet paralyzed. The evolution of the ditching protocol is intimately linked to the advancement of diagnostics. In Warlock's time, he wasn't flying alone. The F-35C is an electronic mind. Its sensors constantly report on the health of every system. 1. Self-diagnosis and data link. The moment Warlock detected the non-recoverable gear failure, the F-35's internal sensors instantly relayed a comprehensive, real-time damage assessment package via secure data link back to the Carl Vinson. 2. The LSOS Oracle, the landing signal officer, receives this torrent of data: hydraulic pressure graphs, gear alignment angles, and flight control response, far exceeding anything available 50 years ago. The LSO doesn't rely on visual confirmation alone. They have an electronic conscience confirming the statistical probability of a deadly outcome. The modern protocol is therefore faster and colder. It removes the human temptation toward heroism or fiscal prudence, replacing it with a data-driven verdict. The odds are unacceptable. The final component of the protocol, the proof that the pilot is the priority, is the search and rescue SAR posture. When a jet is flagged for ditching, the SAR helicopter crew is already strapped in, rotors turning, positioned at the edge of the deck, waiting for the precise GPS coordinates of the anticipated ejection zone. Their operational requirement is severe: 30 seconds to wheels up. This rapid response capability is not negotiable. It demonstrates that the sacrifice of the machine is merely the first step in a higher protocol, the immediate, total commitment of resources to recover the human unit. The pilot ejected. The F-35C has now become a strategic salvage operation, sinking to depths where the crushing pressure is measured in tons per square inch. But Warlock, suspended by parachute, is instantly the centerpiece of a multinational rescue response, a vast mobilized effort focused entirely on one vulnerable life. The system proves that the technology of the machine of salvation is dual-purposed. It creates weapons of immense power, but it also creates equally powerful tools for absolute preservation. The cost of the jet is the entry fee. The life of the pilot is the prize. Let us return to the aftermath of Warlock's ditching in January 2022. The ejection was successful. The SAR team, reacting with the precision born of relentless drilling, plucked him from the cold grasp of the Pacific in mere minutes, fulfilling the sacred duty of the Navy. The immediate relief was followed by the cold logistical headache. The asset was gone. The $100 million F-35C. Some estimates placed the final cost closer to $120 million, including specific classified systems, plunged into deep international waters. This triggered a complex, high-stakes recovery operation involving the US Navy, Seventh Fleet, and specialized diving vessels, because the lost asset was not just metal, it was highly sensitive, proprietary stealth technology. The operation to recover the wreckage, a mission fraught with geopolitical tension and immense technical challenges, cost additional millions. The total price tag for the incident was astronomical. But the price of the jet is irrelevant. The cost of the recovery is secondary. The true verdict of this protocol lies in the philosophical bedrock of the US military. Why is the pilot deemed infinitely more valuable than the machine? 1. Investment in human capital. Warlock is not just a pilot. He is the product of hundreds of millions of dollars in training, 2 decades of focused education, and countless hours in a highly specialized, irreplaceable role. He possesses the unique intellectual and physical architecture to operate a machine of 5th-generation complexity under extreme duress. Replacing an F-35C is a matter of budget approval and assembly lines. Replacing Warlock requires a generational investment. 2. Moral contract and trust. The relationship between the sailor and the service is governed by a moral contract. The pilots who fly these high-risk missions must operate with absolute focus and commitment. That commitment is sustained by an unwavering trust, the knowledge that, should the impossible happen, the entire weight of the collective mind, built of steel and protocol, will move instantly to save them, regardless of the cost to the hardware. If the Navy signaled to its pilots that a $100 million jet held greater value than the life inside it, that trust would shatter. The result would be hesitation in a split-second environment, leading to pilots attempting to stretch the limits of a compromised machine, which is precisely the scenario that leads to the multi-life deck disasters the protocol is designed to prevent. The sacrifice of the F-35C is not an act of waste. It is an act of operational preservation. It secures the psychological foundation upon which the entire carrier air wing operates. The machine of salvation exists in two forms: the physical assets designed for war and the institutional protocols designed for survival. When these two forms collide, when the jet becomes a liability, the choice is always made for the human. The ocean remains the primary killer, cold, indifferent, and statistically ruthless. Technology extends the window of survival, providing the US-16E ejection seat, the precise SR coordination, and the ability to diagnose failure at 500 knots. But the fundamental law enforced by the US Navy remains. The price of duty is steep, and it is paid not with steel, but with unwavering, guaranteed loyalty. $100 million is not a tragic loss. It is the cost of the insurance policy. It is the fee paid to maintain the integrity of the force. It is the demonstration that for the most powerful Navy on Earth, the principle of no man left behind is not merely a slogan. It is the ultimate, non-negotiable operational order.